Now, hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican. Today we are talking with Margaret Anderson, Professor Emeritus at First Nation Studies at UMBC, and she served on the British Columbia Citizens Assembly many years ago, and she's going to be talking to us about her experience. So, Professor Anderson, can you tell us about when you first heard about it and how you were selected and how you found out about it?
Okay, it's been quite a while, as you know, and I don't remember clearly how I first heard about it. I know that there was a selection process of individuals from each riding and each community within the riding, and we were invited to a meeting in Terrace. And at that meeting, the process was explained by the convener of the assembly, and whose name escapes me, I'm sorry. And then two names were drawn from the group, and we were the selected designates, individuals who would be able to attend. There was one man and one woman. I think that was the process in each place. And I remember speaking to the convener and pointing out that they had not, in fact, selected First Nations people from this riding, which is heavily First Nations, and that if they hadn't gotten First Nations representatives here, delegates here, they probably weren't going to. And they did eventually add two individuals from First Nations to join the assembly.
How did they actually select? Were they like drawing paper names, or did they have was it like a lottery ball, or what was?
I don't recall that. I apologize.
Okay. Were there any political beliefs factored into the selection?
Not as far as I know.
How did everyone get along?
It was a very congenial group. We were very well supported. We were paid our travel and accommodations, and we met in a very nice venue. It was I forget the name of the facility, but it was recently completed, and it was a great big round auditorium with comfy seats and electronics at each seat and so on. So it was, and we were supported by having a political scientist present chunks of information to us, and then having breakout groups with graduate students from political science from UBC, SFU, and UVic. And so it was very comfortable, and I think people found it quite a learning experience.
Did the chair act more as a chair trying to get business done, trying to hear from the different members, or was it more of a facilitator, someone who was just trying to spawn conversation and build consensus? How did that person function?
I'd have to say that was a mix. I mean, there was an agenda for each session, material that we needed to go through, but the floor was generally open for discussion and questions. I don't think people felt that they were unable to ask questions at all.
Okay, so you just raised your hand and waited till you were called upon?
That's right.
Okay. How much independence did the assembly have in conducting its own business? You said there was an agenda. Who set the agenda? If there was a group of people who really wanted to talk about an issue that may not have been something the facilitators wanted, did that get discussed?
I don't think that really occurred. People saw it as a chance to learn about the various options that were being presented. They presented all of the sort of electoral systems that might be conceived of, And then we broke out into our breakout groups and discussed them and came back and reported to the group. So there was ample opportunity for sharing views, and there were there were contrary views. I was probably one of the contrarians. A number of us who were from northern communities found ourselves disagreeing with a lot of the ideas in some of the types of systems that were presented. But we were heard, and the assembly really struggled. I think the people from Vancouver, they couldn't understand what we were talking about, but they tried. And so I think it was a good chance for sharing and discussion.
How did you conduct voting?
We had buttons at our desks that we could press for
Okay.
aye and nay.
How much time outside of the meeting was spent on assembly work? How much did this really take up your free time, your life during that period?
There was some reading, but it really didn't. I mean, the assembly sessions provided the opportunities to absorb the information and discuss it. And I think some people got into it in quite a gung-ho way. They eventually formed a group that campaigned for the decision that had come forth from the assembly. I was not among their group. So they may have spent more time. I didn't.
Okay. So you're saying that after you made the decision, there was a group that formed that campaign for that choice. Was there any expectation for that to happen, or?
No, I think they were just super enthusiastic. They really saw that they had done something amazing. I saw it less so, but they felt committed to it and worked very hard, I think, to persuade people to their point of view.
Okay. Were there any rules on associating with other members during that time period, but outside of meetings?
No, there was no rule about it at all. Some people, I shared rides sometimes to the airport with people.
Okay. Was there a required quorum for the meeting to occur, or did most people just attend?
If there was a required quorum, it had always been met. There was never any discussion of it.
During the deliberation, was there an emphasis on just getting a majority, a supermajority, or maybe even unanimity in the decision?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I guess the final result, I can't recall. It passed by what I think would probably be a supermajority, but that was not discussed as needed.
Okay. Do you think, in your opinion, that it could have been larger or it should have been smaller?
No, I think that probably the size was manageable. It was an expensive undertaking, I'm sure, but it allowed people to feel that all parts of the province were represented and had a chance to have their say. And I'm not sure you could have done it with much smaller of a group.
Have you ever served on a jury?
No.
Okay. In general, do you think we should have more citizens assemblies, or do you think they're worthwhile?
I should point out that I, in fact, voted against the final recommendation. I had felt for quite a while that the North wouldn't be well represented in most of the alternate systems. Some of the systems involved huge ridings with multiple MLAs from one riding and so on. A lot of we were presented by the political scientist with a kind of language to think with that I think skewed the assembly towards wanting change. The political scientist who did the presentations explained to us about concepts like wasted votes, votes that never had a chance, and about other kinds of concepts that that small parties that might get 5 or 10% of the vote province-wide, the idea that those should have representation, which it seemed to me that if they couldn't get more than 5 or 10% of any group to support them, that they ought to think about what they were trying to sell. And so I felt that we were skewed by that presentation, towards thinking that change was essential. And certainly the group got gung-ho for it. There were people who thought it was such a great, brilliant idea that that some of us should be made sort of assistant MLAs. They thought that would be a good apprenticeship. They couldn't conceive. I remember one fellow talked about how there were no opportunities for people to learn how to govern, and that would be a good way. And it seemed to me I wanted to stand up and say, wait, run for the school district or your church board or alderman or ML, anything. There are hundreds of ways to obtain leadership experience. But anyway, people got really into it. And I think that created the support for the decision that was made. At the final meeting, when we did vote, there were representatives there from the Greens and from the Marijuana Party. They were so sweet. I wanted to adopt them. Just so innocent. Anyway, they were watching, and clearly these were the sort of parties that never got seats, or almost never got seats. And I just wasn't persuaded that, they shouldn't figure out how to get more people.
All right. So it seems like there was some biasness right from the beginning on the part of the facilitators. So
I don't know if those are biases or just that's the way political scientists think. Who knows? You may.
Well, well, I think in that circumstance, you don't want to. You want to inform them, but you don't want to, like you said, direct them towards, thinking that change is essential.
They did present some of the cons of various systems, but somehow those didn't resonate with the group. I think people came in feeling that change was a good possibility or something that they should look at.
It's fascinating. All right. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to tell us before we finish?
No. I think I mentioned that there were a group of people from the north who were less persuaded, because most of the systems seemed like they would sort of swamp our population in larger groupings. And that was something that, really the group struggled with but never figured out. I think it was a well-intentioned effort, and the people who came were motivated to contribute. There was, it was a very congenial, positive atmosphere the entire time. And the educators, I think, tried to do a fair job. I found that we were sort of swayed, or not swayed, but that the language that was used, it made us incline towards change, or made the group incline towards a change in the system. The language of wasted votes and whatever, you probably know the language that would be used in those contexts. Um, I never felt that my vote was wasted, even when I voted for the guy who lost. And even if I voted for a third party that I knew wouldn't have a prayer, it never made me feel that somehow my 5% of the population was entitled to have somebody sitting there. I didn't think that they presented a lot of the negatives. If you look at the Israeli situation now, where you've got a multiple party coalition, and the tail is going to be wagged by the dog is going to be wagged by the tail of the real right wing. We didn't really absorb that. I don't think it wasn't something that was seen as important. And there are other examples like that I thought should have been discussed that weren't.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This has been very enlightening.
So are we going to come back, or is this it?
No, this is it.
Okay.
You have a good day.